Hello everyone, welcome to this meeting of the Francis Bacon Society. Today we're going to hear a talk from Gary Cordice entitled Discovering Francis Bacon and the Tempest. Gary is a professional singer, actor and dancer who has played lead roles in Starlight Express, Five Guys Named Mo and The Lion King, among other things. He's also an experienced teacher and director of drama, vocals and choreography, and he's the creative director of To Be Seen Theatre Company. More recently, he's been developing his skills as a playwright and composer, and he's also actively concerned with arts and culture, children, civil rights, social action, and economic empowerment. So a short time ago, Gary came across the Francis Bacon Society, and he was fascinated by the spiritual and symbolic aspect of people connected with the arts in the past and the present. So he got in touch and he's going to share his journey with us. I'll be reading various parts, including playing the part of emails sent by our esteemed chairman, Susan McElroy.
Where the bee sucks, there suck I. In a cowslip's bell I lie. There I couch when owls do cry. On a bat's back I do fly, after summer merrily, 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 shall I live now, under the blossom that hangs on the bough. Last year I was asked by a local theatre company to perform in The Tempest. At first I was offered the part of King Alonso. But when the actress who was to play Prospero was no longer available, I was then asked to play Prospero. I knew at once I was given an exciting but daunting task to learn and become one of Shakespeare's most enigmatic and enduring characters. Great, I said, but I definitely needed some research. Booting up the computer and getting online opened up an ocean of information, clips on YouTube of famous actors delivering the final lines of Prospero. Now my charms are all overthrown, and what strength I had's mine own. In the midst of all this searching, I stumbled upon some videos made by the Francis Bacon Society. I was intrigued and soon began a charming and helpful conversation with Susan McElroy, who was immediate in her willingness to help. Conversation as follows. Dear FBS, I have newly come across your website and videos and am finding it all very fascinating. I'm an actor, singer, and was so encouraged by the spiritual, symbolic aspect of those involved within or connected to the arts, then and now. It is encouraging to find minds that are digging into the deep treasures of Sir Francis Bacon, who up until recently I had heard nothing about. I am due to perform as Prospero this summer and wondered if there are any books or videos that may be helpful in how I might approach the role. Any guidance would be appreciated, however brief. I feel that coming across the world of Sir Francis Bacon will give me a perspective and philosophy as to how I approach my art. Like Prospero's daughter Miranda, I feel like a brave new world has opened up with these teachings, and I want to use it in my art.
Dear Gary, what a wonderful and inspiring email you have sent. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. If you can let me have your postal address, I'd like to send you a copy of a Baconiana journal, pre the internet, so not online, which contains an article about the Tempest and a longer article linking Bacon with the theatre, plus some other photocopied excerpts. The book, which is exactly what you need, is written by Peter Dawkins, member of the Francis Bacon Society and founder of the FBRT, the Francis Bacon Research Trust. The title is The Wisdom of Shakespeare in the Tempest, foreword by Mark Rylance, and Bacon's referred to particularly on pages 12 to 13. The Tempest actually appears to be a dramatised portrayal of Bacon's scheme for the advancement and proficience of learning.
Without hesitation, I quickly ordered both The Wisdom of Shakespeare in the Tempest and the Shakespeare Enigma. In the Shakespeare Enigma, it was the odd startling line or paragraph that stood out and excited me. I felt that coming into the world of Francis Bacon was no accident, and indeed, it was something of an answer to some of my seeking for truth. In chapter 8, called The Great Artist, Peter Dawkins states, "Poetry particularly when in a form of drama on stage, is like music. It stirs our emotions as well as appealing to our minds. And this Bacon considered as vital if we are to discover truth, or even want to discover truth. For truth is warm, not cold. It is vital, not dead. Moreover, it is the emotions, Bacon pointed out, that should be our proper study. For they are the causes, the motivations of all things, with philanthropic love, which is kindness, goodness, or mercy, being the greatest of them all. To study them truly, we have to experience them as well as observe them. For this reason, well-designed entertainment provides the greatest form of education, for we should be excited and moved by truth and enjoy it. What we enjoy, we notice and remember." End quote.
Dear Gary, Barry Clark, partly sponsored by the Francis Bacon Society, was awarded a PhD for his work on 3 Shakespeare plays, Love's Labour's Lost, The Comedy of Errors, and The Tempest. Barry was able to prove that Shakespeare could not have written The Tempest. Using computer rare collation profiling, or RCP, he proved that Francis Bacon contributed to the writing of all 3 plays. Barry, an academic, will not present his work in public, but who better than a Prospero on The Tempest? Perhaps we can discuss the possibility of a filmed session with you to include your views of Bacon together with your acting experience. Wasn't it marvellous that The Tempest was featured in the opening ceremonies of the London Olympics and Paralympics? The most joyful, sustained media reportage in the UK that I can recall in my lifetime. I would be delighted to invite you to our next meeting, at which Peter Dawkins will talk about the Shakespeare Monument in Stratford-upon-Avon. It will be in the afternoon, central London, on the 2nd of March. Please confirm nearer the time. Best wishes, Susan McElroy.
Dear Susan, in terms of doing a video session, although rather new to Francis Bacon and performing Shakespearean roles, I would love to be interviewed and share my experience of acting and what I am discovering about Bacon. I have had an extended career in musical theatre, but over the last couple of years I wanted to get into more straight acting. I would definitely like to come to Peter's talk in March, so please have me down as your guest. I look forward to hearing from you again. Best regards, Gary. As I continued my research, I realised just how deeply Francis Bacon wanted his fellow man to truly profit by truth expressed through the arts, which is a great vehicle by which man can truly be elevated and raised higher in his conscious knowledge of self and rise above his baser matter, as Hamlet so passionately alludes to.
Dear Gary, I'm very glad that you can join us for Peter's talk, and we'll let you have a flyer with all the details nearer the time. It's good to know that you'd be happy to be interviewed, but no hurry, we'll wait until you've had a chance to see if the Bacon material is of any value, if it resonates with you, and when you've had time to get into Prospero mode. I'll get the parcel posted. These days, not many people have heard of Francis Bacon, except to identify him as the painter, and they're pretty disappointed to land on our website. Whereas in 1886, when we were founded, his name and writings were well known, but just to a relatively small section of society. We as a society now need to adapt, but without losing that special quality. I can't quite put my finger on it, perhaps an eccentricity. Certainly an attitude, but not bound by conventions. Bacon's life aim was the betterment of all mankind. He didn't set barriers, he was a man of good heart, incredible vision, and had a great sense of humour. He loathed what he saw as the debilitating devotion to the past that he found prevalent in his time. We have to make him more accessible to the current time.
Dear Susan, just to say I have now received the package and will be reading these articles over the next few days. I am encouraged that the betterment of all mankind was Bacon's aim, without barriers and limitations. This is a message that must never die in any of us. Indeed, the candle once lit must never be put out. I want to use my work as an actor and singer in such a way and be what light I can. I am beginning to see this Shakespeare had a divine mission which is still to be realised by many. I suppose the challenge and excitement is continuing to make him accessible to our time in such a busy, fast, impatient world. But for those who find time to slow down and listen, is the potential to discover, even as I have, that such a man is not of an age but still for all time. Thanks again for the package. Peter's scheduled talk in March had to be cancelled, and by now I had been several months into rehearsals for The Tempest. It was not hard as an actor to feel the dilemma of Prospero and the mixed feelings that raged in him as he wrestled against the need for revenge and the ability to forgive those who wronged him and cast him and his young daughter Miranda adrift at sea. In few, they hurried us aboard a bark, bore us some leagues to sea where they prepared a rotten carcass of a boat. Not rigged, nor tackles, sail, nor mast. The very rats instinctively had quit it. There they hoist us to cry to the sea that roared to us, to sigh to the winds whose pity, sighing back again, did us but loving wrong. Susan continued to send me useful information as I continued my research and continued to be inspired. Geoffrey Morris, one of the members, sent the following links: Weekly Poetry Reflection, The Tempest, and Sir Francis Bacon, Understanding Prospero.
Prospero is a reflection of many of Bacon's ideas about how human beings should be and follows his instructions for personal improvement. Both Bacon and Prospero believe in human improvement, and Bacon's essay of Studies gives the impression Bacon would admire Prospero for his commitment to learning. We can also see that he would criticise Prospero for neglecting his duties as a leader. In his life, Prospero made an error in his governing of Milan, and Bacon's essay of Negotiating explains some of the political situation in The Tempest. Prospero misjudged the nature of the man. In his absence, he must not have dealt with his brother directly, and in doing so, underestimated him. He realises his mistake and follows Bacon's advice that, in all negotiations of difficulty, a man may not look to sow and reap at once, but must prepare business and so ripen it by degrees. In this and all of these ways, Prospero is a reflection of ideas during Bacon and Shakespeare's time.
Life Force Arts Blog, Sacred Theatre and the Power of Transformation.
Spiritual theatre must do more than just tell a story. Theatre that is spiritual in nature is transformative in nature. The actors must see their own experience as part of the story and reveal their souls to the audience. The audience should be able to see their own experience reflected in the story unfolding before them and leave the theatre having experienced a personal encounter with the numinous, that is to say, a spiritual quality.
Tempest, defending Prospero, the ideation of spiritual lineage.
The Afrocentric viewpoint holds that all modalities and realities are united and move in one grand manner. There can be no separation between material and spiritual, profane and sacred, form and substance. The human being, acting with personal power, can animate, activate, and galvanize the material or the spiritual. The continuity from material to spiritual is the reality of the Afrocentric viewpoint.
Hi Susan, I just wanted to say thank you for the latest sources on Prospero and arts in general. They're all encouraging. I particularly was pleased to read the article on Prospero. In fact, her whole journey combining her spirituality in the centre of her art. As a black actor going in to perform Prospero, I'm having to ask my own questions, and I found this article particularly helpful. Will I be thought an imposter? A pretender? Will what I bring to the part be enough? I sometimes think of the task ahead and it gets a bit daunting, and then her words about being a strong lead nudges me and gives that sense of duty towards my fellow performers. Still nerve-wracking though it is. Thank you again for your absolute thoughtfulness and encouragement. Best regards from the cloud-capped towers.
Dear Gary, sorry for the delay. I've been waiting for confirmation from the venue for the rescheduled talk by Peter, which is now set for June the 8th in the afternoon. Same venue, College of Psychic Studies in South Kensington. All details nearer the time. I do hope your weekend rehearsals don't start on Fridays. It will be great to see you. Thank you for wanting to share your poem. I love it, especially phrases like to extract the truth from gossip, the troop who delight in discovery, and the rallying cry, truth calls. If we had a banner, that would be a terrific slogan. We have a page on the website which can only be accessed by members, and your poem will be shown there with a little bit about you. Best wishes, Susan.
All my life I've been searching the truth in one way or another. And reading the things I did about Bacon and the Shakespeare plays, the higher purposes written in the text, I found similarities with other spiritual writings from other enlightened people at various times in history, whether it was the Buddha or Jesus, Krishna. In the writings, though expressed differently, there comes a point where the messages begin to sound as one voice. I'd like to now read that poem that was inspired during my research. I have been called to join that curious troop that seeks to solve the mysteries that yet provokes us. I am no scholar, yet, and if that day comes when I am labelled such, let it be because I have burnt the midnight oil, risen even before the lark breaks into song, spent hours in thought to extract truth from gossip, scoured the oft-thin trails for clues and by piecemeal form enlightened sentences that receive the high mind's approval amongst the troop. Why amongst the troop? Perhaps because this venture is not for all. Many are called, but few respond. Who is the troop? They that hunger. This is a hunger that breeds delight in discovery. The troop's belly rumbles until the manna is gathered and consumed. And once having gathered strength, they continue into deeper curiosities. I am such a one, and I have been called. Who calls you? Listen. Truth calls. Can you hear? I have been called. Hi, Susan. I'm doing very well, thank you, and I'm very glad to hear from you. Rehearsals are interesting, to say the least, as we are quite a mixed bunch, and some of us will need more time than others to get into the good of this play. I found that one of the original meanings of my name Gary was spearholder. I love the way in the Shakespeare Enigma, Peter talks about the spear shaker or poet knight, shaking his spear of knowledge and virtue at ignorance and vice. Is it any wonder the plays are still so relevant today? I obviously saw this as part of my duty as an actor, to always be seeking and revealing truth in my work.
Dear Gary, how marvellous that you can join us, and boy, have you been busy. What a wonderful coincidence that your name means spear, from the Old Norse and Danish. Definitely a person of action, cutting through the mire of untruth to reach the truth.
Many other thoughts and feelings that came about as I continued to work on The Tempest. If there is one thing I realized about the play, it is that Prospero demands everything from the actor. You must commit to every feeling, occasion, reason, passion that you will discover about him as a wronged man. A wronged man who is now tempted to wrong those he had been wronged by with his raising of the Tempest. The actor must also be aware that Prospero himself had indeed played out a wrong against Caliban. This island's mine which thou takest from me, and is therefore no innocent bystander to human failure and frailty. Prospero's story demands that the mirror held up to nature must first be discovered in the actor who will play him. I believe on a deeper level, Francis Bacon sets seeds of truth that will open and bloom when an actor enters into the whole creative process without reserve. But I believe it is deeply intuitive and cannot be approached too intellectually. Working on the play with other actors, I realized the frailty of us all in one degree or another. And I can say for myself, indeed, some of the rehearsals started to feel like a burden of excess, much to the point that there was a pang in my gut that reacted to every new text or email for the next rehearsal. Rehearsals that I never missed, unless I wasn't needed, while others took holidays and had a multitude of reasons as to why they could not attend a rehearsal. Rehearsals that went on for far too long, I have to say. I was gathering some resentment and had to decide how I would handle the rest of the process without walking away from it all. One evening I went for a long walk in some nearby woods and debated with my heart all the frustrations, apprehensions, anger, regret, questions irritations, self-righteous opinions, I told them all to leave. And a great weight lifted from me. And although from time to time, one of those emotions would rise in me, it would no longer get the better of me. I would now always look to the bigger picture. It was no longer about me or my concerns, but it was about reaching each time deeper into the story with greater articulation and riding of the rhythms of the poetical work with sincerity and understanding, driving the text with energy and care, all aimed at my fellow actors, but more importantly, the audience. Like Prospero, I had to forget every misgiving and forgive every ignorant wrong, imagined or otherwise. Say, my spirit, how fares the king and followers?
Confined together in the same fashion as you gave in charge, just as you left them, all prisoners, sir. In the lime grove which weather fends your cell. They cannot budge till you're released. The king, his brother, and yours, abide all three distracted, and the remainder mourning over them, brimful of sorrow and dismay. But chiefly him that you term, sir, the good old Lord Gonzalo. His tears run down his beard like winter's drops from eaves of reeds. Your charm so strongly works him that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender.
Dost thou think so, spirit?
Mine would, sir, were I human.
And mine shall. Hast thou, which art but air, a touch, a feeling of their afflictions? And shall not myself, one of their kind, relish all sharply passion as they be kindlier moved than thou art? Though with their high wrongs I am struck to the quick, yet with my nobler reason, 'gainst my fury, do I take part. The rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance. The sole drift of my purpose doth extend not a frown further. My charms I'll break. Their senses I'll restore, and they shall be themselves. After each performance, I was exhausted, but felt that great sense of achievement. The words themselves, as referred to by Barry Clark, stating the involvement of Bacon in the writing of this play, are so exacting and precise to human experience, and the text itself brings out the inner power of his poetical work, infused with spiritual truth, which I believe can resonate with an awakened soul, and may indeed be the cause of awakening of others that yet do sleep. What did Ariel say to Prospero? Mine would, sir, were I human. It took a spiritual creature to point the way of freedom from the human sense of life, right from wrong, black and white, hot and cold, love or hate. We are spiritual beings, awakening from the dream of a false life into an unchanging reality, and love is all there is. Prospero's ways were harsh, but it brought forth a lesson for all involved, including himself, that love covers a multitude of sins or ignorance. The world has collapsed over and over again. We may have failed over and over again, but there is an arm that lifts us up time and time again, and the voice speaks within a poem, a song, or a play such as The Tempest that says, only love will set us all free. Now my charms are all o'erthrown, and what strength I have's mine own. Which is most fate now, 'tis true, and I must be here confined by you, or sent to Naples, let me not, since I have my dukedom got, and pardon the deceiver dwell in this bare island by your spell. But release me from my bands with the help of your good hands. When that I was and a little tiny boy, with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, a foolish thing was but a toy. For the rain, it raineth every day. But when I came to man's estate, with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, 'gainst knaves and thieves, men shut their gates. For the rain, it raineth every day. But when I came, alas, to wife, with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, by swaggering could I ne'er the fright. For the rain, it raineth every day. But when I came unto my bed, with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, 'gainst toss but still, and drunken heads, for the rain, it raineth every day. A great while ago the world began, with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, but that's all one. Our play is done, and we'll strive to please you every day. That's it. Oh. It's on a repeat mode, so I have to stop it otherwise. Thank you. Thanks for that. Still.
So you're willing to take questions?
Yes. Nothing too intellectual, because you might be met with silence.
What did you most find out about Francis Bacon during your research?
I think the thing that I found most interesting in it was basically I felt that through some of the plays that I'm acquainted with, there was a sense of mercy. He's always kind of pleading mercy, or he's always kind of bringing in the quality of mercy. And that to me was something obviously that I had to exercise as an actor when I got frustrated with other people, you know, and they with me, I'm sure. But also,
Especially during rehearsal.
yeah, because it was getting a bit, I mean, the director, you know, God bless her, she really, it was kind of like her first major play, first Shakespearean play. Obviously she wanted to get it right, so the rehearsals were just a bit, in my opinion, overdone, but yeah, so that was, yeah, so mercy was a thing that I felt, because in other plays, you know, in the Merchant of Venice, it talks about, you know, the quality of mercy is not strained. And I read something during the trial of the Earl of Essex, and Francis Bacon was also there almost as an intercessor, interceding. And so I felt, even though, I don't know if people know about the story of the Earl of Essex and just the whole kind of conspiracy that went on, but Francis was still very much pleading for the Earl of Essex to either change his ways, but it was just that sense of mercy that was in there. So it was nothing greatly profound, but then again, it's one of the basic things which we can always forget, that we need to give mercy as much as receive it, you know.
Did you find mercy, for example, anywhere existing in your life before that, as it were?
In my life?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, certainly with my parents. Yeah, I mean, through various relationships I've been involved in, of course, when things go wrong, that's where you exercise mercy, or it's exercised towards you. Sometimes things work out, and sometimes things don't. That's the only way I can relate it to, sort of past experiences with just people that I've been associated with. But yeah, for me, that was obviously he was a very studious man. I can't even begin to approach anywhere near the studiousness of this man. But that was one thing that I felt was very important. It's this whole thing about mercy.
Well, as he said, for him to try and put all that across in plays, was his principal thing.
Yeah, and it's great because it kind of puts a check in our heart if we're watching this play. There might be something going on in our own lives, and yes, it might be hard, but just having that principle of mercy I think is something for all of us to kind of exercise, practice.
So how much of the information from research were you able to bring to the Prospero character?
I felt that when I was going through all the stuff with the Peter Dawkins books and just stuff I found online and the other clips that were sent to me, I had to kind of just take all the information in, and I can't say that I retained much of it, but it was kind of in the back of my mind. So in that respect, it was kind of like just impressions that I had. Just impressions, and those are the things that kind of stayed with me. If you were an alchemist, the years that we spent studying. So obviously those things in the back of my mind, with Prospero having been in this island for 12 years, affecting his witchcraft.
Did you enjoy it all?
I did, yeah. I didn't understand a lot of it, but I just kind of gleaned what I could. Because for me, at the end of the day, after all the research and just the information that it gave me, a lot of what I had to do night after night was just kind of gut instinct. That's kind of what it all kind of down. But all that stuff in preparation just kind of helped.
Did you have dreams about it?
No. When I go to sleep, that's it. Nothing until I wake up. Yeah. So.
To change you in any way? Were you transformed by it, or?
I felt like, for me, it was a personal achievement very much, because it was quite a long process, and going to rehearsals and still having to kind of challenge yourself to be there and go through that whole process, and getting on with people who, when you first got there, you just didn't quite have a connection. And even sometimes, to be honest, once the whole production had been finished, you still weren't that connected to some certain people. So there are exercises there in terms of how you relate with other people. And I felt that I had to be more vulnerable than I had been before, because Prospero is quite a mean character when you first kind of come across it, or at least he seems that way. And as I'm sort of doing this character, I'm thinking, God, it's just a downer. He's just on a downer at the beginning, and he's going to bring the whole audience down. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't really want to be that person, and so it made me question, my own makeup. So I felt that it pushed me, I think, beyond my normal kind of artistic safety barriers, which was good. I'm glad I did it. There were days where I was huffed and puffed, but the fact of actually getting through the whole production and people kind of actually really enjoying the performance, I thought that was a real big bonus,
How many people dropped out?
I wanted to ask you something else. If you met a Prospero type archetype in the real world today, if you met that kind of archetype,
Yeah.
Prospero, would you kind of relate to that person differently, having played his character, or?
No, I guess there'd be. I would just relate to him on a human level, whatever we have in common, we have in common. That's the easy way I can answer that. Yeah, I suppose really. I might ask him about his practice of alchemy and witchcraft, but exchange secrets. But I don't have any, so yeah.
Could you explain how an actor feels at the end of a performance? Are you sort of wrung out, or are you on a high, or how?
It's a mixture. I'll tell you, half of these performances were sort of like in the back end of a pub. So once the performance is finished, my first thoughts are, I'm glad I got through that, I'm glad I remembered my lines, because the last sort of 20 minutes of the play, there's a lot going on, and I'm physically kind of shaking now because I didn't realise how physical the role is as much as the emotional pull, and also the kind of intellectual kind of sense that you've got to have with the text. So all of that was kind of was always bearing on me, but I was always relieved to get through it at the end and think, yes, another night done. And then I'd beeline straight to the bar and get my pint, and then I felt much better. So, yeah.
So you then, is it hard to sort of come down and relax? Would you say?
I mean, for me, there's various things going through my mind because you're always questioning yourself, well, how well did I do? And you kind of know if you've missed a few cues or certain lines, or you didn't quite catch a sense of a scene, you know. But for me, it's just always a sense of achievement, because there's no point of going through 2.5 hours and say, "Oh, that was appalling," going home in a grotty mood, because you've denied yourself the pleasure of what you've done, and it all kind of almost dismisses the audience's enjoyment of what you've done as well. So I never look at it in that way. It's always got to be a positive aspect, because otherwise, why do you do it? You know.
Gary, you speak of in the literature, the publicity literature, of perhaps coming to having gone through the liaison with the Bacon Society, of having a perception about Francis, having gone through this performance.
Yeah.
Where does that leave you with Francis now?
I'm just curious to learn a lot more. I'm intrigued to learn a lot more, because for me, the first thing that jumped out was just his love of the arts and how he wants to use that as a vehicle for telling truth. And of course, I know it's a much wider, his life is much wider than that. So I'm intrigued to just kind of keep digging into it, you know, which for me is a bit of an intellectual challenge. But that really is what I'm trying to do, is just to find out more about his background and the whole kind of spirituality, the whole mystical side of it. That's what interests me, because, you know, as a kid, I've gone to all kinds of churches, you know, and I'm at that stage now, where I just want to find out, all the spiritual aspects of his life, and how that then relates to how he lives day by day, you know, and with the things that he does. So I'm very much at the beginning of that process, really.
The thing that intrigues me about Bacon is, in current times, which was mentioned very early on in the introduction, to place him in current times, is that if you take an intersectional approach to Bacon, and in the research that was given to you, some of the texts, there was one about how an Afrocentric or an African approach to Shakespeare, Francis, the same person. I guess that because of the nature of the demands of the performance, do you think you will ever, in a sense, return to that bit of research to see whether there is more to mine from it?
I think so, yeah, because the lady who'd written the article, she had played Prospero, and the stuff that she was writing about was very, very interesting, the whole link. And she wanted to break away from the very standard kind of white, middle-aged or elderly kind of Prospero that you normally see. And she came from a totally different background and gave Prospero an African heritage and combined all the kind of spiritual aspect of it. And I think I already touched the bare bones of it, but it is something that I would like to look more into, because I think it's very valuable. And the whole thing of connecting the spirituality and the arts, and I guess a lot of it coming from a black perspective, which we don't always normally appreciate or maybe consider. So yeah, I will definitely be looking more into this, yeah.
It's encouraging you say that, because Bacon's a universal person. He's a universal being.
Absolutely.
So therefore, if you could say almost a man for all universes.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you think that then your creative work as a creative director that in your own writing, that you, in some way, you may feature some of Bacon's work in future plays that you might write?
Yes. I mean, it takes time to find out what it is, but that is something that I do want to do, because I think what I found out, his voice is still relative to today, you know, and maybe some of the principles that he stood for have been lost along the way, but they're still there, and I think it's just finding creative ways to kind of keep them exposed.
To me, the artist is in a way, one of the things I've drawn in my little sort of journeys into Bacon is this question of philanthropy and charity as a way of love. I think artists at their best are very charitable. They give of themselves to great measure. In what way might that inspire you? Because I sense that you've spoken of mercy, but listening to you, I think there's something you have to get. You know, you're on a journey. You're on a way with this.
Yeah, very much so. I think for me, whatever plays I write, it'll always be challenging, I guess, the prejudices that are still there. You know, I'm currently working on a play about an African American who came over in 1866 to continue his acting career. And within that, hopefully within the writing, I want to prick things that kind of, I guess, draw upon the compassion of people, arguments for injustice, and see where mercy fits in there. You know, I'm talking about things that I'm kind of barely kind of getting into, but that's kind of where I'm aiming to go into. Yeah. Don't know if that answered your question. It probably wasn't a good answer. Thank you.
Who wrote the music for this?
The show? Myself and a friend of mine called Stephen. He's very much into medieval music, and so from time to time we get together and write music. And this song was actually meant for this same one-man play that I'm writing, but it kind of fits so well at the end of the Tempest that we just used it, and people loved it. So
That's gorgeous.
yeah, thank you.
So is it an echo of African music
Not yet.
Next stage.
Yeah, that's the next stage. Yeah, yeah. When we've got the money to go into a great big studio and do a wonderful 3-hour production. Yeah. Thank you. Can I escape from the chair now? Yeah.